Ethan Strauss reported something I thought was interesting about the owner, your New York Knicks owner, James Dolan. James Dolan has security in place at the Garden that uses facial recognition to hassle fans who may have had the social media commentary of sell your team. How the hell is that something that can be reported and happen in 2022, 2023 without people getting all sorts of pissed off about that kind of misuse of power? How did you receive that story when you read it? I mean, you saw what Ethan Strauss was reporting, where you're using facial recognition to harass your fans for having an opinion.
If you haven't read it, basically, when you go to Madison Square Garden, the facial recognition tech there is picking up on everybody coming in, and they have people classified with different codes. And some of the codes are like, we know you're in the building, and some of them are, we know you're in the building, and we're going to come have a conversation with you about knowing that you're in the building and you're being watched, depending on where you're coded. So one of the guys that Ethan interviewed was this guy who's, he works in finance. He's a fan of the Knicks and the Rangers, comes to Madison Square Garden fairly frequently. And he goes to the Garden one day, this is, I believe, pre-pandemic, and they come up to him and tell him that he's been flagged. And, you're being watched and just know. And so he said, well, what was I flagged for? They refuse to tell him. They won't tell him. Every time he goes to the Garden, they do this, but they won't tell him why. And the reason he's flagged is because a few years ago, he went on the Facebook page for JD and the Straight Shot. That's Jim Dolan's blues band.
Of course.
And left the comment, sell the Knicks, or sell the team. That's it. That's his crime against humanity. This tech that theoretically should be used to get unruly fans out, keep unruly fans out, people get drunk and get into fights or whatever, or at the highest level, stopping terrorist threats, right, is being used for the fragile ego of this man, Jim Dolan, because he's sad when people say, you should sell my toy. It's my toy. Why should I sell it? So the story mushrooms out of it. You guys like that voice. I could tell, man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do the rest of the show.
Sounds like just a generic crying voice, though. It doesn't really sound like Dolan.
How do you know? You've never heard him talk.
It does.
It's a great crying voice.
It sounds like Droopy Dog.
I'm trying
Droopy.
to figure out who it sounds like.
Yeah, it's
Let me hear it again.
Let me hear it one more time.
Yeah.
My name's Jim Dolan, and I'm sad.
That's
because
Droopy. Yeah, that's
everybody
Droopy.
hates me.
I'm happy.
Roy.
It sounded like Roy.
Oh, that did sound like me, actually.
But yeah, so the other instances is a woman who she's a lawyer. She works for a law firm. That law firm is representing a legal action against Madison Square Garden. She's not on that case. She just happens to work for this same firm. Was denied entry to Radio City Music Hall to watch the Rockettes with her kid who's on a class trip because of that. They're using it literally for the pettiest of reasons. And this is the part I didn't know. They own the Tao Group. So if you've ever been to Tao in Las Vegas or, L.A. or New York, whatever, they own that, and they use that tech at Tao as well. It is insane.
So you're flagged if you want to try to get into that restaurant. They're going to say, hey,
Yes.
you're flagged.
Yes.
We're keeping an eye on you.
Yes. Yes, Stugotz. It's insane. It's insane. My favorite part, did you see their response? They were asked about it.
Yes, their response is typically evasive.
Not evasive. The NBA's response is evasive. It's like, people, whatever is legal in your state. That was the NBA's response. The Knicks' response was this highly inaccurate report from an unqualified blogger. And I said, okay, how people react to things tells you everything you need to know. Because, of course, they were going to be defensive and say, hey, these reports are unsubstantiated or whatever. But the extra step of saying an unqualified blogger, for someone who's covered the league for more than a decade, for someone who has the #1 sports Substack in the world, right? For someone who wrote the most read article in the history of ESPN.com, for someone who covered the greatest team that we've seen and wrote a book about them, right? Like, you can say a lot of things about Ethan Strauss, unqualified bloggers about the dumbest piece of shit comment you could say, and it reveals everything you need to know about the person saying it.
Forgive me, I thought that you meant their response to Ethan Strauss, which was, we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. Was that is a fine. That's a $5 fine for coughing right into the microphone.
I didn't. I took a step back. I
You
rolled
coughed
back.
twice into the microphone.
I rolled back. I can't help it. The mics are sensitive, Stugotz.
It was your
Roll
droopy
back.
dog.
I can cough over here. You can still hear it.
I'll cut you a break, $3.
It was your droopy dog impersonation that made you.
It makes my throat dry. You like that voice better than whiny fan?
Yeah.
Really?